Welcome to Aldabra, in the most remote corner of the Seychelles, where the sun is just setting after an incredible 3 days live deep down in the Indian Ocean.
It's been absolutely fascinating what we've seen at more than 250 meters below, and in the next hour we'll take you right back down.
So let's start at the start with our first descent into the deep, and a moment in broadcasting history with both of us heading down for Deep Ocean Live. Aldabra is famous for its remoteness and for its very treacherous currents. Anything could happen, so don't go anywhere. Sit back, enjoy the views like we are, and let us take you down to the depths. Very cozy in here, getting warmer by the minute, I have to say, and one person that I'm already very well acquainted with is my pilot for this mission, Randy Holt. Thank you so much for having us on your submersible. Well, what an extraordinary working environment you have.
It's amazing down here. You know, every dive is different, and we get to go places where people have never been before. So
explain where we are. I'm going to change the cameras, which I can do. We've tucked ourselves into a crevice, haven't we? 135 meters down.
Yeah, we're kind of leaning against the edge of a cliff, an underwater cliff. We were fighting some downdrafts and some updrafts when we got to this position, so we've just kind of parked ourselves on a ledge and are trying to stay stationary.
And I should give you your proper title, of course. You are an aquanaut. If an astronaut explores space, you explore the deep.
Yes, you know, we're in inner space. It's a whole new place down here, and you know, it's a 3D environment. So we're always moving around. We got to know where we are, how we're moving through the water column. Are we lighter? Are we heavier? All of that.
Yes, exactly. It's amazing to watch you with all the controls. And as you said, you're flying these submersibles, you're not driving them. And as you said, the oceans make up 97% of the habitable space on planet Earth, which gives you both a sense of the depth of the oceans, but also that 3D environment that Randy was talking about. We have joined an expedition led by the scientists of the Nectar mission. Their aim is to perform a deep ocean health check, to map, to chart, to sample, to see perhaps what no one has ever seen before, and even search for those rarely seen species lurking in the shadows, the dream perhaps of a six-gill shark or even a coelacanth, the dino fish thought to be extinct for millions of years, and crucially to see what is happening to that often colourful coral as it faces unprecedented threats. It is so important as habitat and home to millions of species. The big question for the scientists is, could the deeper ocean be a refuge from the dangers of climate change and even from plastic pollution that we've talked so much about at Sky? Well, we are not alone down here. This is Sub 1, the red one, although it's been showered by this downdraft of sediment, which you will hear the team refer to as Omega. Out there, we can see them, is Sub 2, the yellow one. Yes, the yellow one. What are we in? The red one, I've already forgotten, which they call Kensington. In there is the principal scientist on this amazing expedition, Dr. Lucy Woodall from the Nectar mission, and piloting her sub is Robert Carmichael. The scientists have been coming down, as I said, very delicately, trying to take samples of some of the deep corals that we've seen, some of the fans that are absolutely beautiful, certainly, and they very delicately take some of those and back up to the surface. And up on the surface, if we peer up, we can see the outline of the mothership above, and up there is my colleague Mark Austin. Mark.
Anna, we're up here, we're safe and well. It's amazing, I just can't believe that we're seeing you and hearing you like this. Just give us a sense of how you're feeling right now.
Well, apart from being very hot, it's just quite extraordinary. Just before we came on air, we saw a white-tipped shark very near. How near was it, do you think, Randy?
It was 3 meters away from us.
3 meters away from us. So you never know quite what you're going to see. All above us, it gets more and more blue. Down beneath us, it's like a murky brown colour. It looks very, very forbidding, I have to say. And so the deep beneath us, we already went down there to about 175 meters, but above, it looks pleasant brilliantly light. I can see small fish dancing on this rocky outcrop just above. And obviously it's nice to have the company of the principal scientist, Lucy Woodall. Can we talk to the yellow sub? Let's try. Hello, Robert and Lucy, can you hear us?
Kensington, Omega.
Omega, I'm approaching you from your starboard side. I'm at 469.
Copy, depth 469 on our starboard side.
Hello, Lucy. What have you seen so far down here to make you excited that this is a healthy environment for marine animals?
We're able to look at all of the communities. Oh, wow, we're looking right now at the shark. Look up.
Look up. Oh, shark, shark.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Straight down.
Straight down. Amazing. Lucy, thank you so much for the moment. Thank you. The Necton mission, which is what we are part of, is happening in the Seychelles, in the Western Indian Ocean, the least explored, yet the most threatened of the world's oceans. And we're diving off Aldabra, an idyllic atoll 700 miles southwest of the main Seychelles island of Mahe. We're actually, though, closer to Africa, some 400 miles away from the coast there, and around 270 miles northwest of Madagascar. The visibility here is amazing, and the sphere of Perspex gives us a 270-degree view. You can look above, you can look even below where our feet are, and you can look left and right, as we do all the time. You must be very tempted to look around you all the time.
Oh yes, there's so many things. In fact, if you stay in one spot for 10-15 minutes, you see something you never saw before.
Well, we can also control the cameras down here. As I said, we are perched on a rocky outcrop. There it is.
Should we try some lights?
Yeah, try some lights. There we are. We are literally hanging on to the seamount face, the wall that builds up to the atoll. If you imagine this was an old mountain that has gradually sunk to leave this enormous lagoon in the middle of it. You can fit sizably fit Manhattan in New York in the middle of the lagoon above us, and that's partly why we have such difficulty with the currents, because at certain times of the day all the water floods out and all the water floods in. And a reminder too that we really don't know what is beneath us. No one, apart from us this morning, has ever been deeper than where we are, and we don't know what we're going to see, whether we're going to shift direction suddenly. Now, what is very important to remember here is that there are a number of zones. People used to think that it was just the shallows, and then they would think it was the depths, and now gradually they're realizing that there are many stages in between. The zones are changing. So for example, you get the scuba zone, which is 0 to 30, perhaps 40 if you're very experienced. Here it would probably be 0 to 20 meters, because there is no decompression unit here. It's very difficult to get help. So most people diving here, if they're allowed, you have to have very careful permits, would only get to 20 meters. The first of these zones then, where the scuba divers go, is called the Photic zone, known as the Sunlit Zone. Enough light penetrates this upper layer of water for reef-building corals to thrive. It's also the most exposed to the impacts of human activity. So the next zone down, which is where we are now, is the Mesa Photic zone, 40 meters to about 150 meters. The middle light zone, it's called, often regarded as the start of the Twilight zone. At this level, sunlight starts to dwindle, corals become flatter and thinner. They are more likely to be plankton eaters than use the photosynthesis of the algae inside them. And here you begin to see the white-tip reef sharks, which I mentioned we saw just before we came on air. You're more likely to see the potato groupers, and I'm hoping we might see some of those as well. And you might see that this is perhaps a refuge from some of those dangers that I mentioned. Next is a new zone that people have found. They thought beneath us the life would tail away with this very little light from the surface, and it became increasingly difficult to see life beneath us. But now confirmed in a previous Necton mission, in fact, there is the rare Photic zone, 150 meters down to 300 meters, the term that scientists use to describe rare amounts of light, rareophotic. Our mission on the whole of this week's coverage in Deep Ocean Live is to get to the bottom end of this zone, to 300 meters. The zone largely unexplored, and likely there are maybe thousands of marine creatures down there that have never really been seen before. 300 meters is the maximum that this submarine can dive to. What would happen if we went below 300 meters?
Well, we don't want to do that, Anna, but they are designed and pressure tested with some safety factors in there, so it's actually been tested beyond 300 meters, but we're not going to do that today.
Okay. What are we seeing down here? We're seeing very small fish. You'd think perhaps they were more like small marine fish. We're seeing a large number of sea fans, some a little bit difficult to see in this image we're presenting to you now, but we will move around very shortly. We're seeing some whip coral, long thin lines. They're famous because they can't retract their tentacles. If you imagine that coral is a food for large numbers of animals, most corals try to whip in their tentacles, certainly, to get out of the way. And parrotfish, famously, they bite through coral with a fused front teeth, and that is in fact what gives us our beautiful sandy beaches. And some of this debris we've had drop down, I mean, this red submersible is completely covered in that marine snow, isn't it? Some of that is probably washed away from the coral atoll and drops down on us. It's been quite amazing, actually.
We are broadcasting live to you from the Indian Ocean at a depth of around 816 feet, which is 250 meters. It is the deepest we have been yet on Deep Ocean Live, and if the communications hold and the currents are favorable, we could possibly go a bit deeper. I can tell you I've broadcast from some pretty remote and amazing places in my time, but none quite so remote or amazing as this. Let me just show you the picture here, and it is quite unnerving in some ways. It's like we've descended into an altogether sort of alien world, which of course we have. It's like a moonscape at the bottom of the sea. At this depth there's barely a glimmer of sunlight. What you're seeing are the lights of the submersible. The technical name for where we are is the rareophotic zone, and if you saw our program yesterday with Anna, well, this is now about 100 meters deeper. And what's so exciting about this is that we are probably the first down here. It's largely unexplored, unmapped and unsurveyed, and so in some ways it is a privilege to be here. The job today, the task today, is to establish the impact of man on the ocean, deep down here and on the surface. So we are on something of a hunt today, even down here. I should just say the species down here have evolved over millions of years, long before we walked on Earth, yet the threats facing them now are unprecedented. But here, even in these pristine seas, is there a threat from plastic pollution, coral bleaching and climate change? Well, that's what we hope to find out. In the next hour we want to reveal just a little bit maybe about what's really happening in the deep. And if we start with one thought in mind, it must be this, that a recent study by Newcastle's University scientists suggested there is more than 393 million tons of plastic in our oceans, but only 246,000 tons is on the surface. That means that 99% or 99.9% is suspended in the water around us. It's lying in the bottom or buried in the seabed, and it's quite a frightening thought, Randy. And I mean, how much different is this from where you were yesterday, 100 meters further up?
Well, we've gone a lot deeper today, and the landscape has changed quite a bit. So instead of seeing that vertical wall, we're seeing more of a slope of hard bedrock and these broken boulders that we're clinging to right now.
Yeah, and we're having to cling on because the slope is so sharp here. And what about being down here? It's very deep. As I say, it's 250 meters. The pressure is what? Something like, 360.
It's about 25 times what we're seeing on the surface down here.
And the temperature down here is 12 degrees Celsius, whereas up the top on that ship where I was yesterday, it was, 34 degrees. What kind of depth can this submersible we're in? I'm not getting worried, but what kind of depth can this withstand?
Well, even though it's designed for 300 meters, they pressure test it to 25% beyond that, and designed for even deeper. So, like we say, I mean, we can go to any depth one time.
Yeah, but the pressure on us now, I mean, if we tried to...
It's so much that we couldn't open the hatch if we wanted to. In fact, I could undog it and there's no way you could open that hatch. There's so much force holding it closed.
Right, and I said at the beginning we may try and go deeper in this submersible, but I mean, how much deeper could we go?
We could go down to 300 meters.
Yeah, and I should give you... I'm just looking down actually, and it's very, very dark down there. I don't know whether we want to go any further. We're having the most extraordinary journey over this moonscape down here. We're still at 815 feet, so just under 250 meters. And we are seeing the most extraordinary, some coral, all sorts of reef fish down here. And it is really something else. And they're just deeply, there you can see in the distance through that, the other submarine. I'm just putting the lights on there. And we're just trying to get closer to that submarine so we can be realigned with it. But Randy, I mean, explain, what are we trying to do here?
Right now, we're just trying to keep our comms up, and we're watching the Kensington. They're doing a science survey. So
that's the other sub there.
Yeah, so they have these stereo cameras, and I'm just trying to kind of avoid the rocks here and come up behind them.
We are, though, I can see now at, about 250, 260 meters down. So you can understand some of the problems that we're having. So maneuvering the submersible and at the same time staying in alignment with the LED receiver is the issue that we're having at the moment.
Coming up next, how Deep Ocean Live brought together science and technology.
And the surreal feeling as we plunge down in the subs.
All right, ready to go?
Ready to go. Oh, that's so weird. Oh, look, you can see the other sub. That is amazing. Bye, Sky. Well, as well as the deep itself, the journey to and from are quite amazing. You start off tipping down in the submersible into the blue, and instead of seeing marine life, you literally just see blue. You're in open sea.
Safety briefings have been completed. Both subs are clear to dive. Dive, dive, dive.
All right. Ready to go?
Ready to go. Oh, that's so weird. Oh, look, you can see the other sub. That is amazing. Bye, Sky.
And you descend down through that and you get to 200, 250 meters and it's suddenly dark. The sunlight goes and just a glimmer of sunlight, but most of the light then is the submersible lights.
Wow, that's amazing. It's so dark. That's so dark. Oh, wow.
It lights up this very eerie kind of world. It's like a moonscape but under the sea, and it's unnerving.
Yeah, you want to go east or west?
Then you realise on the rocks all those living creatures. You think, oh, there's nothing down here, and then suddenly he puts the light close up on a rock, and you see it's teeming with life and with living things. And then you realise that you're in this sort of other world, or world within a world.
Sea urchin or something.
Oh yeah.
And it's not your world, is it? It's a rocky outcrop. You can see the bottom of the seamount coming up.
Our current depth is 443 feet. Our heading is 190 degrees. Life support systems are good.
And then the journey up. I have to say it's probably my favourite bit.
Up we go.
As you ascend, you start to see this glassy appearance, as if the sea is above you.
Champagne ascent, we call it. All the bubbles.
And you start seeing these giant bubbles rising up with you.
Surfacing now.
And then you pop out and see the ship. It's an amazing feeling.
Gonna be a little bounce here.
Okay.
No, I loved it, but I did think it was so humbling. I did think we just intruded in this other world, but it is absolutely fascinating.
Even coming to the surface is amazing because you're coming through, you're surrounded by bubbles and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And next thing you know, it's like you're getting rocked up and down and you pop out in the bright sunlight and you see the ship here and it's still washing up and down and you feel like from the depths up to the light and you feel that contrast, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
All of it interestingly different all the way through. And then you hit the bottom, which is quite sandy.
Yeah.
And then we're off finding deeper parts and little communities to see, sea fans, small fish, groupers. We had a shark circling above.
Yes.
From quite early on, the shark didn't want to seem to go.
Yes.
But they come to investigate who we are, what we are. They've never seen us before. And we dropped down to, I can't quite remember, 175 metres or so.
Well, that's when we thought we'd lose you.
Yes.
But we heard you. We heard sort of just about heard you. But we kept communication. Well, it might look easy, but there was lots of extraordinary technology that made it happen. Well, as you saw, our submersibles headed down towards 300 meters below the ocean. It's at that level that sea salt, pressure, and a lack of electromagnetic waves stifle any traditional broadcasting methods. So a receiver was lowered between the submersibles and the ocean zephyr to act as an antenna. LED lights on each of the submersibles sent audio and video information to this platform, which in turn transferred the information to the mothership by a cable. Our pictures were then sent by satellite back to our HQ in London and then onto your screens. And how difficult was it for that communication between the two subs? I mean, that was one of the most extraordinary parts about this whole thing.
The communication between the subs was, it was a fine dance. It was a ballet, if you like, where we had the robot on a wire that was giving us that two-shot of the submersibles, but also we had that weight depressor, that all the technology. You've got two things on a line in water with current on a steep cliff, and then the subs. So it was like a puppet show, but masterminded like a ballet. And also with the ship, we've got a 90-meter ship here. And that was positioning to 2 meters here and a meter there, just so we could make that connection. And I hope the connections that we were able to create help people see the ocean in a profoundly different way.
And just finally, I mean, were you sure it would work?
Of course, I was sure it would work. No, we are here taking.
Do you have your doubts?
I think the fun of what we're doing and the excitement of what we're doing is that we're pushing boundaries. We are exploring. We are entering the unknown. And by definition, we are making things up as we go along. That's what's so exciting about this. This was a risk for us, and it was a risk for you at Sky to do it. We came together and said, you know what, let's give this a shot. Because if we succeed, then we are going to, we're going to change. We've changed the baseline, you know. Now everyone else that follows needs to do this, and better. We've just like reset the dial. And I think, that's what's exciting about it. I hope, what we've done is help people reconnect with the ocean in a new way. Bringing pictures, bringing images, putting people at the heart of the story. Because the journey into the deep, I believe, is the next heroic odyssey for humanity, the most critical journey of exploration that we take. We've been looking up when we need to be looking down, and we need to go into the deep.
Now, we weren't here just to look at what was happening in the deep, but on the surface too.
Yes, and that meant me having to spend the night in a tent on the island here with lots of these. This is a robber crab. They wreak havoc. I have to say that I did not sleep last night because these things, lots of them, tried to get into my tent, literally tried to unzip it, I think, at one point. They come, they smell, they have extraordinary sense of smell, they can smell the food that we were cooking, and there were hundreds of them on the beach last night. 15 different sorts of land crabs here. Thank you, Josie, for bringing that one. We're going to get another orange one in a minute, I think. 15 different land crabs on this island just shows there are so many different species here that are thriving because human beings are not. This is not a place for mammals. There are some rats, some cats, not on Malabar, which is one of the 4 islands of the Aldabra Atoll, all surrounding this lagoon, none on here. So no mammals means other species, flightless birds and other creatures. And we were privileged enough to see a female turtle battling yesterday, a green turtle, battling to try and make one of these holes where they lay their nests. It's exhausting work for them. It was grunting as it tried to do, and in fact the one we saw tried 3 different holes. And Lindsay, I know it was you that woke me up to come and see this. I say woke up. It's almost impossible to sleep when robber crabs are trying to get into your tent. And the work that the turtles do to get up here, to fight their way through. And we think that the turtle we saw laying last night, her eggs have all gone.
There was an army of robber crabs literally circling around her, just waiting for the opportunity to get in and take those eggs. This morning I've watched one of our wonderful endemic species on Aldabra, which is the flightless rail, also wandering around with hatchlings in its mouth. They look dead, so presumably they were ones that emerged from a nest too far back on the beach and they just couldn't make it. If they emerge in daylight, they risk obviously just being dehydrated and dried up in the sun. So everything is out to get those poor things. It's a real battle against the odds.
We'll walk towards Craig and towards Stephanie as well and see if we can see the actual... well, they've nearly all gone there, and the flies are all buzzing around them, aren't they? This is the nest that eventually our turtle tried to lay her eggs. I say our turtle, we watched her for about an hour and a half. And if you go right down there, if you can see all the flies, look at those eggs, they've already gone. And I think, we don't know if she was just too exhausted to cover them, too exhausted to cover her hatchlings, so they stay in there. And the robber crabs would have gone in and sucked out all the goodness. And this one thing that's really struck me about both the marine environment and being underwater, things like blacktip reef sharks that are nocturnal, that the fact that the reef allows hiding places for all the smaller fish. The predator and prey aspect of the natural world is truly shocking when you see it like this.
I think it is, and I think the problem is, in a lot of the environments that we're used to encountering, predators have often been eliminated or are at much lower density than they would be in an intact place like this. And that is one of the things that you really notice, is that the number of apex predators. But that's actually a sign of a really healthy ecosystem. The system needs predators, and certainly on coral reefs that's been shown that coral reefs with healthy shark populations are generally much healthier.
What is really distressing is when you see animals that have been caught in marine bits and bobs. And in fact, I know that Seychelles Islands Foundation has filmed one, a loggerhead turtle. They pass by here. They're not really, they don't base themselves here, do they?
Here, but they're on migration through here. No. And in fact, we have lots of incredible animals that just come by Aldabra, and it's an important staging post for them. There are humpback whales that come through here, which you can see breaching off the settlement beach, whale sharks. There's a whole additional fauna that is just migratory here.
And the pictures were of the loggerhead wrapped around in fishing gear, and in fact some of this sort of stuff is probably part of this fish aggregation devices. It's really common to use this technique for tuna fishing, so if you're thinking about your tuna sandwich later today, there is a very good chance that it will be a fish aggregation device that has been used. But fishing is really important to the Seychelles economy, so the question is, should it be better regulated rather than banned? Are there ways that these fish aggregation devices could be used better for species, so that this doesn't get cut off and left to just float in? And this is part of the stuff that the turtles that you see are caught in. But green turtles here are a success story, aren't they? Tell us why.
They're an enormous success story. They were hunted here in the old days, where this island was exploited. But since that time, they've been very heavily protected since the late 60s, early 70s, and we've really watched their populations booming. And that's a fantastic thing to see. What we don't want to see is that going into reverse or into decline.
OK, Lindsay, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Giant tortoises, so many, that's what there's 150,000. That compares with the population in the Seychelles of 93, or around 93,000. One animal that has been eating that plastic fantastic is right in front of us there, a giant Aldabra tortoise. Land tortoises like this have been around for 200 million years, and only in 2 places in the world are they now endemic, and that is the Galapagos Islands and here on Aldabra Atoll. 150,000 of them. Their story is remarkable. They were the chosen food of sailors. They can go for months without food and water. They would bundle them into their ships, put them down in the ship's hold, leave them there, and then eat them when they needed to. Here on Aldabra, they were almost wiped out by 1900, and certainly Charles Darwin is amongst those people who've tried to save the Aldabra giant tortoise. It's an extraordinary thing to see them here in the wild. It is, of course, just after noon here. The tortoises need to get out of the sun. They need to, because they could cook to death, quite literally. And Dr. Lindsay Turnbull is here with me now. It is so amazing to live amongst them. One slept right by my tent last night, and when they fall asleep, it's as if they've expired. They can't go on any further.
Yes, it reminds you of a sort of clockwork toy that only has so much life in it, and eventually at the end of the day the clockwork just runs down and they just stop wherever they happen to be, and you'll find them there in the morning when they'll wake up again.
And if we look down here, we've got another endemic species, a mother and her young. This is the Aldabra flightless rail. If you think of the dodo, the famous dodo, it's probably just about hidden now in there. They are amazing. They're very friendly. They're not used to people. It just shows wildlife, not used to people. There's the young chick. That's been eating the turtle hatchlings today. We've seen them running off with them off the beach, and that is extraordinary to see, because there's no other flightless bird left in the Western Indian Ocean.
That's right, and flightless birds are one of those great casualties of humans arriving on islands. This is why this is such an extraordinary place. It's an island, lots of things can't get here, and in particular mammalian predators can't get here naturally, and that allows all kinds of mad experiments and evolution to take place, including flightless birds. Unfortunately, when humans arrive, as you were just describing, they came here to harvest the tortoises and to harvest the turtles, but what they brought with them were rats, were cats, were pigs, were goats, and those things are utterly devastating to island wildlife. And that's one of the big things that SIF is always trying to do, is to eradicate any invasive species that have got here. Aldabra is not quite pristine because we still have rats and cats on some islands, although not on Malabar. Yeah, so it's good to see this guy here. It really is, and he is so tame, like you say. He's one of the real great characters of this island.
Going back to the giant tortoises, are there too many of them? Because 150,000, we can see if we look at this, there's some of the trees as well. They eat absolutely everything they can. A little tree here, no lower branches, because they literally live off vegetation, don't they? They need everything they can, and actually in the dry season, they can starve to death, can't they?
Yes, absolutely, and I don't know if your camera's able to pan around, but you can see some shells behind us of animals that's exactly what's happened to them. They simply have expired. Perhaps they've overheated, perhaps they weren't able to find enough food. And they're not predator limited, so you have to ask yourself, when you ask, are there too many of something, what limits their population size? And basically animals are limited by one of two things. They're either limited by food or they're limited by predators. These things don't really have a lot of predators as adults, so they are limited by the number of food, the amount of food. But that doesn't mean there's too many of them. You know, as long as they're replacing themselves, then the population is stable, and this population is stable.
Yes, and in fact we've got some flip-flop in some excrement, I think, over there, which we'll get in a minute. I just want to show you before we go there. This is the tortoise skull, quite small. These massive leg bones as well that hold them up. And you can see beyond this carapace, the line here, the weight they have to carry, and the hip bone over there as well, as it sort of begins to disintegrate. It's amazing to see these just lying around. And in fact, you do see some of them dead. They see turtles dead as well. Some of the mothers that simply can't get back to the water in time, they're absolutely exhausted. They come overnight, they sit in the sun, and if they don't get back to the water, they will die. Same with these guys as well. If they don't get into the shade in the midday sun, we saw them under the trees there, they literally will cook inside. They'll cook to death. Terrible, and they're so slow moving as well that you just don't know if they're going to get back into the sun in time. So show us what we've got here then.
Yes, well, this is a tortoise poo, and you know it's a tortoise poo because it doesn't appear to be able to digest things terribly well. So we can see whole dead leaves in here, and that's just the natural food of the tortoise. They will have a go at pretty much anything. And that's the problem with this, because if I turn it over, you can see that this tortoise has been chomping away on one of those flip-flops that our team has just been cleaning up. So the tortoises do go down onto the beaches. They will have a go at anything. They will scavenge away at things. And they just don't understand that this is not food, and they will eat it. And the colours also attract them. So we did some experiments with coloured rice balls, actually, to find out which colours they particularly liked, and red and yellow colours were particularly attractive to them. But as you can see, they seem pretty keen on these green flip-flops as well.
We've got the team here from the Seychelles Islands Foundation and from the Aldabra Cleanup Project who have been cleaning this beach for us during our coverage on Deep Ocean Live. And talk us through some of the... You've got a toothbrush there, Josie. What are the sort of things you found here?
I mean, everything and anything you can imagine that's ever been made of plastic. These are just some toothbrushes. You might recognise these brands. This is a part of a North Face flip-flop. This is the packaging of a water bottle that's come from Malaysia. This is... What else have I got in here? All the things that I find interesting. This is some orange juice wrapping that's also come from Indonesia. Oh, and this is a king chess piece. One of our other volunteers has managed to collect basically a full chess set just from cleaning the beaches because, I mean, anything that you've ever made of plastic, if we don't currently have a solution on how to recycle plastic, it's going to end up somewhere. Best case scenario right now is that it ends up in landfill, but we do know that these chemicals are leaching out of the landfills into our water. So even if we put these plastics in landfill, it could still end up, the chemicals could still end up in the sea.
It's almost like we need a complete rethink of not only our consumption of plastic, but is in our entire consumer society, isn't it? And that's really where we're at. You're one of those PhD students from Oxford University who have joined the Aldabra cleanup. What have you got out of it? And to be with local Seychelles people as well, to come here and try and make this pristine place more pristine?
It's just been an absolute roller coaster and life-changing experience. These guys are amazing. So I've made friends for life. I've also really struggled with the heat. I mean, it was snowing when we left Oxford and came here, and it's sometimes 35 degrees. You know, very high humidity, working in the hot sun. But I kind of feel like that's sort of how it should be, to get the privilege of coming here when you're not Seychelles. It's the dream for Seychelles people to come here, and most can't. So if you are British, to be able to come here, you should have a good reason to come here, and it should be hard. And it is, and it's really bad that it's so hard to get this plastic off.
Josie Mahoney, thank you. Craig Francourt, you were born in the UK, but you are Seychellois, live there now. Amazing trip for you as well to try to restore. And I know, as Josie was saying, people in the Seychelles dream of coming to Aldabra, don't they?
Absolutely. This is like winning the lottery for anyone from the Seychelles. So, yeah, coming here is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Very privileged to be here. And I think for us as well, it's amazing to be a part of the solution as well, somewhere as pristine as this place should be. It's despairing to see it like this, but it's great to be a part of the solution, particularly as a Seychellois person as well.
So show us the sort of things that you found. This is on this beach and another very small beach up here. And I have to say, this is really, the whole of this coastline, the northern coastline, is made up of coral, ancient coral, isn't it? So there's only a couple of beaches. So this is what you found just in small areas. It's worth remembering.
Absolutely. So this is something that we've done in less than an hour, a small group of us, and this is a drop in the ocean compared to what we've been doing down in the south, but we've got flip-flops, as you can see. I think we've got 2 or 3 bags of flip-flops in 50 minutes already. We've got some PET bottles here also from all around the world, some branded as well. Some have been in the ocean for so long as well, they're starting to degrade and turn into fragments. We have miscellaneous items, consumables, glass bottles. As Josie said, anything and everything that you can imagine we're finding here.
Thank you so much, all of you, for your help, for your hard work this morning. We really appreciate it. Keep up the good work. This is the most extraordinary place to come. The number of flip-flops there really underlines the problem of plastic pollution.
But will those pictures make a difference? Next, how Deep Ocean Live made a generation of school children sit up.
Given their importance, why aren't there more marine reserves?
Well, that is a very good question.
I've got some school children with me from up and down the country. We've got some really pressing questions for our team in the Seychelles about climate change, biodiversity, and of course, sharks. Yeah, and I think that one's for you, Anna, because you've seen so many there where you are. We're starting to call you the shark whisperer here at Sky.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to bed dreaming about them, I have to say, Sarah Jane. Lovely to see all the children there. Absolutely brilliant.
Andy is piloting Anna below the ocean this morning. They are sitting there having a great time. They're exploring new things down there. We've got some quick-fire questions for you. Let's go to Joel. Just asked the last question, so Joel now has to hand to Lucy from New Battle High, who's got a question.
What's the weirdest type of species you've found underwater?
The weirdest ones I think some of the scientists have seen have to be the sunfish. It was about 2 meters big. Louise saw it up, she's on the ship right now, at 200 meters, and I think they're the weirdest thing because they sort of swim around like this. The potato grouper who follows it up to the surface.
Some of the weirdest things I've seen are things that don't look like anything you've seen before. These jellies that glow and they form these colonies, and you know, they might be the size of a garden hose or something like that, but they're all little small organisms.
Wow, absolutely amazing. I mean, it's wonderful to see all of this, and Mark went even deeper, obviously, as you continue to remind me, to 257 meters. I don't know what you saw down there that tickled you.
Yeah, 113 meters deeper than you at the moment. The thing that actually struck me, I didn't see many weird fish, but what I saw something that I felt was very weird, and I'm sure the scientists will say, no, it's normal. But we were just going up to a rock, and suddenly a lobster came out. What looked very much like a lobster just came out of a tiny little sort of cave thing, a sort of crack in the thing. Out came the lobster, had a look at us and went back in, and I just thought, what's a lobster doing down here at 250 metres? Is that a normal place to find lobsters?
Oh yes, that's where they hang out.
It's not
that's
weird
where
at
they
all.
make their home. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because when we talk about weird things, they're things that are different to us, and as we're air breathers and we live on the surface of the water, most stuff looks weird to us down there. Of course, it's just evolved to live in that way and have that special shape and live in a certain way because it's underwater. So, I don't know, when I think of weirdest things, I think of things like the anglerfish. They're pretty cool because they've got their own lure. So they've got this little thing that comes off the top of their head, it's often lit up, and this helps attract prey to them. That's pretty neat, it's pretty weird.
Joel, who's from Featherston High, he's got a question for Mark Austin and the scientists.
Given their importance, why aren't there more marine reserves?
Well, that is a very good question, and a very good question addressed to a place like this, where something like 15% of the sea is a marine reserve, and as we were hearing earlier, it might be 30% soon. Rowena, why aren't there more marine reserves?
Well, I think if we take the Seychelles context here, we can see in the recent extension of the marine protected areas that it's really hard. There are so many people who are using the ocean for a variety of different uses, and to try and get them all to agree to bring in measures can be really hard. So it's a long process and an important one, but with all these competing uses, we have to find a way to use that resource sustainably. That's the key, I think. Lucy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, right? You know, we're sitting here now, it's a beautiful conservation area, but actually, you know, there is a lot of people in their lives and their food security depends on the ocean. So we can't just say we can't take anything out. We need to do that in a sustainable manner. This does take a lot of consultation because it only works if you've got buy-in from everyone who uses that area, but it also takes political will. So something we can help to do as scientists is provide information of what's out there and what areas can be used sustainably and what is that sustainable use. But also trying to understand areas that actually they are so unique and so important that really as humans we shouldn't touch them, and we should be looking at other areas that maybe might regenerate a little quicker.
Yeah, well there we are. It is a sensitive subject, of course, because fishermen have their livelihoods and they have to make a living.
Let's have a question from Krupa, who's from Featherston High.
How many years would it take to remove all the rubbish from the ocean?
Oh, that is a good question.
I'm going to guess and say, well, you couldn't do it. I don't know what... let's ask Lucy and then Rowena.
Yeah, so actually you're right. We can't remove all the rubbish that's been put into the ocean. That's just not possible. Some of it is still on the surface of the water, but the majority is fragmented and down at the bottom. So rather than concentrating on the removal, we need to concentrate on stopping the tap and stop it getting into the ocean. That's going to be the most success for us.
And most of the plastic is tiny, tiny beads that have sunk to the bottom anyway,
Yeah,
in the seabed and in the coral.
That's right, yeah, a lot of it's on the seabed, so we just can't remove it.
Yeah,
that's where it
it's
is.
amazing pictures. Rana, what's your view?
It's all about prevention now. Large-scale removal will be ineffective probably at this point. And as you said, quite rightly, obviously microplastics is so much more of an issue now. That's in our food chain. So it's more about now stopping that flow of plastics into the ocean.
Yeah, so it's for the next generation to start looking after the ocean better than we did, maybe. Back to you, SJ.
Thank you. Final question from Dawn, and this is for Anna down in the submersible.
What is the process for naming new life if discovered in the Twilight Zone? And do you bring it to the surface for further study?
Goodness me, I don't know. I don't think there is yet a Mark Austin lobster, but I'm sure he'll be fighting for that, as well as the deepest person ever to be in this part of the Indian Ocean, certainly. But certainly one of Lucy's colleagues at Necton has 3 things named after him. Professor Alex Rogers. They're very interesting animals, certainly. But would you like something named after you?
I'd love to have something named after me. I don't care what it is.
It's been an absolutely fascinating experience being down here, I have to say. It's wonderful to hear the questions there from the school children. It's interesting the types of questions you're asking. This is a world that is totally unexplored, that literally nobody knew what was down here off Aldabra. Nobody even knew the shape of the coastline. We've been able to show with the Necton scientists how the slope shelves off so steeply as we can show you there. It is extremely foreboding. You look down and it's a sea of brown inky colour, and you literally don't know what's down there. The fish are around us, they're trying to come and say hello. There's still life down here. It's critical life as well, because the big question is this a refuge if the seas get warmer? Can the corals down here survive? Can some of them move into cooler water down here? 20 degrees certainly down here. And Aldabra Atoll itself, it is a world unlike any other. There are frigate birds flying over that look like pterosaurs. There are giant reptiles walking along, and it is extraordinary to see the 2 things together amongst the best protected part of the world. As Randy here tries to keep us in position, we're swinging around in the currents because we've come right up to the rocky outcrop. We are now facing the deep. Let me show you what we can see. There you go. That is the deep ocean, everybody. But that is what you're fighting for. There are fish out there who need the shallows. They need the shallows for juveniles to feed, to prey, and it's absolutely crucial. Deep ocean life has been an extraordinary experience for me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. From the deep, goodbye.
Ready to go?
Ready to go. Oh, that's so weird. Oh, look, you can see the other sub.
It's amazing. I just can't believe that we're seeing you and hearing you like this.
Wow, that's amazing. It's so dark.
Some really pressing questions about climate change, biodiversity. Oh, shark! Wow!
I broadcast from some pretty remote and amazing places in my time, but none quite so remote or amazing as this.